on the NewsChannel 5 network. This is Open Line.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. We are talking pork tonight, and by pork, I mean the pork report sent out by Beacon every year. And I have Ron Schultes here with me, the Director of Policy over at Beacon Center. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity.
This is actually a pretty funny read, although it really shouldn't be funny.
Right. It's a very serious topic, and so in light of that, you got to be able to have a few laughs, and so we try and write it in as lighthearted and a sarcastic way as possible to make it possible, I think, for people to get through it without pulling their hair out in frustration. So
yes, but when we talk about pork, we're talking about basically government waste, sometimes government fraud, and you guys have highlighted the top 25 of just this past year.
Exactly. This is something we've done every year for the past 14 years. This year is almost $214 million that we highlight at both the state as well as the local level from cities all across Tennessee.
And unfortunately, Nashville has plenty of examples highlighted in here, as well as our surrounding counties. We're going to talk about those projects tonight so you know what is going on as well. But first, let me talk about what the Beacon Center is.
Sure. So we are a free market think tank. We're nonprofit, nonpartisan. Essentially, our mission is to empower Tennesseans to live their version of the American dream by getting rid of those government barriers. So we like to describe it as, imagine if you showed up to a race and then you found out there were obstacles and hurdles in the way. Our mission is to get rid of those so that way it makes it easier for people to live their lives. And unfortunately, good governance is part of that equation, and that's why we do this every year.
All right, Chris Conti took a look at this pork report yesterday. So just to kind of springboard into our conversation, let's look at what he brought to light yesterday. Actually, I'm told our story froze, so we're going to get to that in just a second. So let's just go ahead and dive right into some of these Nashville examples. Some of them were brought to light by our NewsChannel 5 Investigates team, particularly the ones that deal with Metro Nashville Public Schools. And at the end of the day, this is pretty sad looking at that waste, because we know teachers are underpaid, and our schools need better books, they need better supplies, our teachers need just better things in the classroom. What did you guys look at as particularly wasteful?
Well, one of the things is, unfortunately, our governments have gotten away from focusing on their core services. These are the things that we expect our government to deal with: roads, public safety, schools, and oftentimes they're not managing those funds well or spending on money on other things that takes away funds from them. So some of the things that we highlighted in terms of Nashville education was, one, we highlighted a TIF that took money, the TIF program, where funds were taken out of the school fund to fund a TIF program, which just essentially gives money to downtown developers to build high-rises and hotels and whatnot.
A lot of money, like $1.5 million?
Absolutely. Yep, this is a lot of money. We're talking also about a program that the MNPS implemented for over $1 million, which they did illegally, by the way.
Yes, and they freely admitted to it.
Absolutely. And then when they didn't even realize there's no way to track how much it's being used or if it's helping or not, and that was $1 million that could have gone to things that in the classroom that could help children, and we have no idea. Those are just two of the examples with our school system here in Nashville.
And then the other example was when Dr. Sean Joseph was fired, his parting salary that he left with.
Absolutely. In fact, not only do you have his buyout, you have the school system that is pledged to help defend his legal costs, because the State Board of Education threatened to come after his teacher license. So not only did we pay him to leave, essentially, but we also said, hey, we're also going to defend your teacher's license in court as you walk out the door. Meanwhile, we've got issues where, as you said, no books, or teachers haven't been able to get raises and keep up with our high cost of living here in the city. And this is what we talk about all the time, with focusing on what matters most.
Yes. Okay, so this is just one example. And I want to remind you, you can call in, you can talk about this report with us, how the Beacon Center compiles all of this. If you have issues that you want to talk about, whether it's TIF spending or something else, go ahead. It's conversation tonight. 615-737+ is the number to call. Now we want to get back to Chris's story, looking at some of these other issues that the Beacon Center highlighted in their pork report.
Trim the fat, or in this case, hold the pork. That's what Mark Cunningham's conservative-leaning Beacon Center wants government agencies to do.
So this is a way for us to educate the public on how exactly their money is being spent.
Today, they released their annual pork report, ranking the best of the worst government spending. Ready? Last year, Rutherford County raised property taxes for homeowners by about 6%. Then, just a few months later, county leaders actually gave Costco $1 million so that they could develop a new wholesale club here right off I-24. And that's not all. The Richard Siegel Soccer Complex has been losing about $150,000 a year, but instead of selling it to a private contractor, the city invested $14.5 million on new lights. It'll take 127 years to pay that off. Nashville didn't fare much better. The Pork Report takes issue with the nearly $102 million the city gave to Amazon, a company that last year profited $10 billion.
The city of Nashville has a budget deficit. I mean, we have a real problem, and instead of spending money on the infrastructure that we should be spending on, we're giving it to special corporations. We're spending on just the dumbest things you could possibly think of.
Mark Cunningham's favorite example of government waste, this $2 million visitor center at Reelfoot State Park, torn down after it was discovered the structure wasn't earthquake-proof. Earthquake-proof. $700,000 of taxpayer funds gone.
Taxpayers should be furious. This is a terrible, terrible example and just shows government inefficiency at its worst.
The best of the worst when it comes to how your tax dollars are spent. Chris Conti, News Channel 5.
It really is enough to make you mad, especially when several areas are saying we've got to raise taxes if we want to do these things.
Right.
We need better infrastructure. So many people are moving here, and then we see this kind of waste.
I think a lot of people would be okay with paying more in taxes if they knew it was being spent wisely.
Right.
But what this report shows is time and time, year over year, that's not the case. And that's why voters get frustrated. And they know that their money is being wasted. They believe that their money should be going to police, schools, safety, roads, and that's just not what happens.
Right, it's like get back to the basics of what we need to do. I do want to talk about the Amazon deal that Chris touched on there. Doing this show, I know there are two things that fire people up: TIF spending and this Amazon deal.
Right.
And not that everybody doesn't love Amazon. I mean, trucks are everywhere these days. They just made another investment in Wilson County in the past couple of weeks. But this Amazon deal to bring 5,000 jobs to the Nashville area, they're building it downtown. I had Mayor Briley sit here several years and month after month say Nashville did not put TIF spending upfront money into that deal. What is the Amazon deal comprised of?
Sure. So it's composed of mainly three components. First is a $65 million grant and straight up cash from the state. Then there's another $21 million in tax credits from the state, and then the remaining $15 million is tax credits a grant from Nashville. So basically, for every job that Amazon hires, the city will pay them, I believe it's $500 a year, and that comprises the remaining $15 million, or 15% of the $102 million that we're giving to the wealthiest man in the world, depending upon the day, to come to Nashville.
Yeah, and basically the Beacon Center's beef is we don't need to dole out these incentives anymore to bring people in here.
Exactly. I mean, all you have to do, I think we joke in our office, if you look at the city skyline, we should talk about putting a crane in the seal because it's almost like our city bird.
Right.
We don't need to pay people to come to Nashville. People want to come here enough as it is. And it's not that we are mad that Amazon is coming. It's the fact that we're using taxpayer dollars that could have been better spent to bring them to come here. We look at our traffic, our crumbling infrastructure that just can't keep pace with this growth, and we're essentially pouring gasoline on that fire by giving away hundreds of millions of dollars.
Does Beacon Center ever get to raise its hand or sit down with the mayor or lawmakers before these deals happen and say, slow your roll? Are you guys ever on that end of things?
Unfortunately, no, because what usually happens is officials will come to our both city and state elected officials and say, hey, we have this opportunity to bring company X here if we allocate this amount of money, but we can't tell you who it is, or we can't make it public yet, because if we do so, they'll get scared and then they'll leave, or other cities and states will know how much they're offering and they'll just one up our deal. So unfortunately, a lot of the times we don't find out about this until the back end, until essentially the deal is signed, sealed, and delivered.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. I would love for you to join the conversation. It is open line, 615-737 Plus is the number to call. We're coming back with more on the Pork Report right after this.